Summer 1944. After an American submarine commander launches an attack from within an enemy convoy,
it's clear Ramage is suffering from what we'd call target fixation. He can only see the ship that he is about to torpedo.
Ship, starboard bow! It's on a collision course! Sir! Not gonna lose the ship!
the commander's dangerous focus forces his crew
All head flag!
to take their survival into their own hands. In World War II, a subsea weapon allows warriors to fight from beneath the waves. With cunning, force, and tenacity, their enemies strike back. Revolutionary, but still sometimes primitive, it's a desperate bid to change the course of war. Their stories are legend. February 14th, 1943. The American submarine, USS Trout, prowls off the island of Borneo in the southwest Pacific.
Target, port side!
Just after dawn, the crew sights a Japanese ship 5.5 miles away. Commander Lawson Ramage identifies the vessel as a tanker, which transports oil for Japan's war machine. It is a prime target.
Clear the bridge!
Ramage decides to sneak closer. Trout submerges to home in on their prey.
Yards. There, torpedo tubes 1 and 2.
With torpedoes ready at a range of 700 yards, Ramage begins his attack as the skies brighten.
Fire 1. Fire 2.
2 torpedoes rush from Trout's tubes. The first shot strikes the target.
Hit.
The Japanese ship suffers damage, but remains afloat. The crew waits for another hit. But the second torpedo proves to be a dud. Ramage has fired 6 defective torpedoes during this patrol. This one should have sunk his target. His anger boils over.
You can see that in his report. He's got capital letters and exclamation points to emphasize his level of frustration.
Nicknamed Red by friends and fellow officers, Lawson Ramage was in Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, when the American naval base was attacked by Japan.
When he sees the devastation to the Pacific Fleet, that is a big motivator for him to go forward and get revenge.
With much of the surface fleet damaged or destroyed, only U.S. submarines are left to take the war to Japan. So more than a year later, when Ramage's personal campaign against the Japanese is thwarted by a dud torpedo, he takes the failure to heart.
For someone of Ramage's character, who is extremely aggressive, this is very personal. This is a grudge match.
Having lost confidence in his torpedoes, he decides to finish off the enemy ship a different way.
Down periscope.
Ramage decides if I can't kill it with my torpedoes, I'm going to go in and go after it with my guns.
Battle surface. Prepare to surface.
Trout surfaces, and closes in on what they believe is a Japanese tanker. Ramage's crewmen load shells into the submarine's deck gun.
Fire!
But after a few rounds, the Japanese ship fires back. Ramage was wrong. It is not just a tanker. It is a freighter, retrofitted by the Imperial Japanese Navy for war.
All of a sudden, the enemy is firing back at him, and the next thing he knows, he has blood all over his deck. And he decides this is not the right choice here.
With his surface attack on the Japanese ship proving a miscalculation, Ramage must find a way to safely disengage his submarine and crew. He realizes only one option remains and swings USS Trout around to ready another torpedo.
Fire!
Luckily for Ramage, this torpedo scores a hit. The Japanese ship begins to sink. Ramage shifts focus to his crew. At least 10 are injured. For those struck by machine gun fire, their wounds are too serious to be treated aboard the submarine. Ramage will set course for the American submarine base in Fremantle, Australia to get the medical care. But he continues to brood over the faulty torpedoes and the consequences for his men.
It's infuriating. You're putting your life on the line, the lives of your entire crew. That's absolutely unacceptable.
In Australia, Ramage confronts Rear Admiral Ralph Waldo Christie about the dud torpedoes that plagued USS Trout's patrol.
Christie tells Ramage that the problem is not his torpedoes, but that he's a bad shot, and that he and his crew need to perform better.
The confrontation does not go well. Fairly soon thereafter, Christie's chief of staff kind of grabs Ramage by the scruff of his neck and says, "It's time to leave."
Even worse on Trout's next board patrol.
Give me a bearing. Bearing 120.
Ramage fails to sink a single ship.
He's got a lot of misses and one dud, and although he may chalk it up to poor torpedo performance, his superiors think otherwise.
Christie decides that it's time for a change.
There's obviously some frustration over Ramage's performance, but rather than relieve him, Christie chooses to send him back to the U.S.
On the East Coast, Ramage is assigned to a new submarine, still under construction at the Portsmouth Navy Yard. USS Parche. Parche is of the new Baleo class. Thicker pressure hulls allow these submarines to safely dive to 400 feet, 100 feet deeper than their predecessors. At a cost of about $3 million each, the U.S. Navy will build more of the Baleos than any other class of sub. With their greater depth range, Lawson, Ramage, and a new crew return to the Pacific.
Thanks, son.
In July 1944, they hunt targets in the Luzon Strait. The passage is a crucial sea route for the Japanese, between the Philippines and the island of Formosa, or modern-day Taiwan.
This is really the back door to the Japanese Empire. They have no choice but to continue to send supplies there in order to keep the home islands afloat.
But like Allied shipping in the Atlantic, Japan's supply vessels now sail in large convoys, with escort ships and anti-submarine technologies missing earlier in the war. In response, American submarines also adopt a tactic from the Battle of the Atlantic. They begin to hunt in groups, like Hitler's famous wolf packs. Here in the Luzon Strait, USS Parche operates as part of a wolf pack. But American submarine commanders do not welcome the change.
These guys are inherently individualists and loners, and forcing them to work in wolf packs, it was not the desired assignment.
There is another difference. Unlike Nazi wolf packs, which receive orders from the U-boat command based on shore, a senior officer on board one submarine in the group coordinates American wolf packs. For this patrol, the wolf pack coordinator is experienced submarine captain Lou Parks. Parks's job is to direct USS Parche and two other packmates. For Ramage, the problem is that Parks is on his submarine.
There's a lot of challenge with having two senior officers on board a submarine, so that's going to create some tensions.
It is all about to come to a head. After limited success, at 2016, on July 30th, 1944, Parche receives a message from one of its packmates. The contact report reveals the location of a Japanese convoy. Captain Parks orders Ramage to give chase. Parche charges toward an epic showdown at full speed. July 30th, 1944. U.S. submarine commander Lawson Ramage calculates a Japanese convoy sails about 35 miles southwest of his current position in the Luzon Strait. But as the hours go by, USS Parche fails to locate the cluster of ships. Ramage believes they have altered course, but he cannot order a change to the sub's path. The man in charge of the wolf pack Parche hunts with is Captain Lou Parks. Ramage is frustrated to have Parks on board his submarine.
Being the commander of a submarine, they really are lone wolves. So they're very used to being able to take total responsibility for their boat, and they don't need anybody telling them what to do.
Ramage wants to request an update from USS Steelhead, the packmate which tracks the convoy.
Can't break radio silence.
But Captain Parks overrules him.
Ramage wants to know exactly where the convoy is located, and Parks wants to wait a certain amount of time to get that report, and there's some disagreement between the two.
Ramage insists. Parks finally relents. At 0030 on July 31st, Parche radios for the coordinates. 2 minutes later, packmate USS Steelhead responds. Ramage's hunch was right. The convoy had changed course. Parche heads in the wrong direction.
Set course 167.
Ramage gives the next order, not Parks.
You just kind of have to read between the lines that these two probably weren't the best of friends there.
Parche speeds toward the convoy's revised coordinates, but it will take hours to reach the new location. In the wardroom, steward's mate second class Carl Kimmins goes about his work. Kimmins joined the U.S. Navy in 1940, when restrictions on assigning African Americans to combat roles in the U.S. military remain in force.
American submarines carried that complicated relationship of race offshore with them. They tended to be assigned as stewards and as mess attendants.
But submarines are small and close-knit units.
A lot of the African Americans tend to take on roles working as torpedo reloaders, for example, or even as gunners.
When required, every man on board is ready to contribute to the fight, as Kimmins is trained to. At last, at 0240, radar reveals a cluster of blips 19 miles away.
4,000 yards. Man battle station.
After more than 6 hours of pursuit, Ramage's crew prepares to attack. Kimmons assumes his role as a phone talker in the forward battery room, ready to relay action and instructions to crewmates. Still out of visual range, Parchi closes in on the convoy's position.
When Ramage finally locates the convoy, he decides to make a full-out run on the surface to be in position to intercept it.
On the bridge, Ramage and his best night lookouts scan for confirmation of the enemy ships. 10 miles away, beyond the range of Parchi's watch, Japanese convoy Mi-11 sails to the Philippines. Its ships carry troops and thousands of tons of supplies, protected by escort vessels. Aboard the flagship, the convoy's commander surveys the ships under his charge. They sail without lights under a moonless sky. He hopes the convoy can slip undetected through the Luzon Strait. But all of a sudden, explosions shatter the peaceful passage. USS Steelhead, Parchi's packmate, launches an attack. Steelhead's opening salvo scores hits on 2 ships.
At this point for the Japanese commander, it's terribly chaotic. He's desperate to try to keep his charges together so that he can move them away.
USS Steelhead quickly fires another 4 torpedoes. With all their preloaded tubes empty, Parchi's packmate withdraws from the attack and submerges to reload. It is standard practice aboard U.S. submarines.
If you submerge your submarine to do your reload, it's a much more stable environment. You got this 3,000-pound torpedo, you need to get it out of the rack and into the tube, it's easier to do it.
Meanwhile, with 3 ships struck by Steelhead, the Japanese fire signal flares to alert the convoy to the enemy in their midst. But instead of just signaling their own ships, the flares also illuminate them. And finally give Ramage a visual lock on their location. He can now see the targets he has chased all night. But as Parchi moves into position, one of the 3 nearby escorts that guard the convoy turns toward the submarine. To evade the threat and set up his attack,
Right full rudder.
Ramage orders a bold maneuver. Parchi's crew turns the submarine to starboard and begins a 270-degree turn he calls a reverse spinner.
Ramage's reverse spinner is actually a reverse turn, almost a full circle, 270 degrees, hooking back around to kind of throw the escort off.
But with the Japanese spooked by torpedoes fired by USS Steelhead, the situation changes quickly. As Parchi completes its turn, the submarine finds itself face to face with the convoy.
They're going right at each other now.
However, with Parchi still obscured, low in the darkness, the Japanese are unaware they now head directly toward another enemy submarine. For Ramage, these new positions create a problem. The nearest target, a freighter, is now only 450 yards away. The distance is too close for Parchi's torpedoes to arm. Ramage needs to act. He alters Parchi's course to charge past its target, then swings around to take aim at the freighter from behind.
This is a really crucial time because as soon as I open fire on the Japanese, all hell is likely to break loose.
At 03:59, Commander Ramage's attack begins. Two torpedoes streak through the water. But both miss their target. Just moments later, something new draws Ramage's eye.
His attention is immediately going to be turned away to those bigger, juicier targets.
However, to pursue the aircraft carriers, Parchi must advance deeper into the convoy. Ramage must decide if the reward is worth the risk. July 31st, 1944. In the Luzon Strait north of the Philippines, American submarine commander Lawson Ramage stalks a Japanese convoy from within.
He loses his focus for a minute because one of the lookouts calls out aircraft carriers.
Crucial to the Imperial Japanese Navy, aircraft carriers were the warships used to strike Pearl Harbor. Knocking one out deprives Japan of not just a ship, but also aircraft and trained pilots.
As it turns out, these are not aircraft carriers, they're tankers. That's still a primary target. That's a feather in your cap if you can sink a big oil tanker.
Ramage makes his choice and orders his submarine, USS Parchi, deeper into convoy MI-11 in pursuit of their new targets. As Ramage controls the action from Parchi's bridge, he's in constant communication with the conning tower.
The conning tower really is the central nervous system for a submarine during a time of attack. It has the torpedo data computer, it has the radar, it has the sonar. It's an incredibly tight area. Imagine cramming half a dozen men into a space about the size of a bathroom.
In Parchi's conning tower, torpedo officer Lieutenant Frank Alcorn tracks targets and operates the torpedo data computer. Born and raised in the Deep South, Alcorn has already earned a Silver Star for gallantry in action.
Frank Alcorn has a huge responsibility. His job is to make sure that the forward and after torpedo rooms are working seamlessly.
Got good setup on transport.
While the crew on deck looks ahead, Alcorn has kept track of the freighter behind them Parchi failed to hit just minutes ago. He has news for Ramage. The Japanese ship is now within striking range of the submarine's stern torpedo tubes.
Alcorn is to be commended for the fact that he is keeping his eyes on the target they just attacked.
Ramage does not hesitate and takes advantage of Alcorn's setup. A single torpedo erupts from Parchi's stern. After hours of frustration, they score their first hit of the night. But the freighter is just the beginning. Ramage returns his attention to one of the tankers and fires 4 torpedoes.
Fire!
The first hits the ship's bow. 3 more explosions seal the tanker's fate. All 4 strike true.
Ramage has to be more than pleased with the torpedo performance tonight. His torpedoes literally just destroys one of his targets, 100% hit ratio.
It is a welcome departure from the torpedo trouble which plagued Ramage a year earlier aboard USS Trout.
As it turns out, Ramage was right. The torpedoes were having problems, just as he had once told his boss, Ralph Christie.
Ramage's complaints helped prompt a complete overhaul of U.S. Navy torpedo design. The key modification is a rebuilt contact exploder The new exploders incorporate a metal alloy recovered from a surprising source, a Japanese plane shot down during the attack on Pearl Harbor. Introduced in late 1943, the upgraded American torpedoes now reliably deliver destruction.
Right full rudder.
But 8 minutes into Parchee's attack on Japanese convoy Mi-11, it will take more than effective torpedoes to keep Ramage racking up kills. As Parchee closes in on its second Japanese tanker of the night,
Closing at 1,000 yards. Fire!
Parchee fires 3 more torpedoes. Ramage does not know it, but the tanker he aims to sink is the convoy's flagship, which carries the convoy's commander. Two torpedoes find their mark, but one is a miss. The 7,000-ton tanker remains afloat. Escorts, now alert to the sub's presence, open fire on Parchee in retaliation. Tracer bullets streak across the night sky. The fierce fight will push Ramage to try something no American submarine commander has ever done before. In the early morning hours of July 31st, 1944, the bridge crew of American submarine USS Parchee scrambles for cover after launching an attack from inside an enemy convoy. Under fire from a Japanese ship, Commander Lawson Ramage considers his next move.
He's just steady as steel, walking onto one target after another amidst all this din of confusion.
He sets his sights on a new target, a 7,000-ton freighter that sails with convoy Mi-11. But Ramage has a serious problem. They have already fired all 10 of Parchee's preloaded torpedoes. To continue the fight, more torpedoes must be loaded into tubes at the submarine's bow and stern.
He's in the middle of a convoy and he's absolutely defenseless. The standard drill at this point is to pull off, submerge, and reload.
But instead, Ramage gives an unprecedented order.
Alcor, get those fish ready.
I'm in the middle of a successful attack. I got the hot hand now. Let's reload our tubes and keep on firing.
The submarine charges at 20 knots to pursue their target and evade the convoy's escorts. With Ramage's order, his crew begins a surface reload. Men in the forward torpedo room battle to maintain their footing as they wrangle the torpedoes, which are over 20 feet long and weigh 3,000 pounds.
It's frankly very dangerous. To reload on the surface in the middle of a fight is putting your ship and your men's lives at risk.
In the conning tower, Parchee's torpedo officer, Lieutenant Frank Alcorn, waits for word that the daring reload is complete.
Fortunately for Ramage, Lieutenant Alcorn has drilled this crew to perfection and they know how to do this.
Just after the reload began, the forward torpedo room reports.
Tubes 1 and 2, ready, sir.
Torpedoes are now set in 2 of Parchee's tubes. The first ever attempt at a surface reload by an American submarine in the midst of battle is a success. Parchee moves into position to fire on the 7,000-ton freighter Ramage identified as his next target.
Lucian, fire.
torpedoes close in on the enemy ship. Both streak into its hull. As water floods into the freighter's engine room, Ramage's latest quarry comes to a halt.
In the midst of this, he's got targets to the left, targets to the right. He's just probably trying to decide which is the best prize to go after.
Now, Ramage decides to hunt down the convoy's flagship that he failed to sink earlier in the fight. As the crew attempts to reload additional torpedoes on the weaving submarine, Archie maneuvers to fire its stern tubes.
Ramage is like a speedboat skipper up there. He's just dodging ships right and left.
But the torpedoes are not yet ready. And the convoy's flagship begins to fire on the submarine from just 500 yards away. Now essentially defenseless, Ramage's drive to stay in the fight may mean he has pushed his luck too far. Before dawn, on July 31st, 1944, U.S. submarine commander Lawson Ramage attempts another surface reload of their torpedo tubes.
Ramage is motivated to reload these tubes on the surface because if he goes away for half an hour or an hour to reload, he may lose this convoy and lose his opportunity.
While the watch on the bridge of USS Parchi come under very heavy fire from within a Japanese convoy. He orders all non-essential crew to clear the bridge for their safety, including their Wolfpack commander, Captain Lou Parks, whose presence has dogged Ramage since the start of their patrol.
It's a very awkward situation. I think Ramage respects the guy, but he doesn't necessarily want him looking over his shoulder either.
Those who remain on the bridge wait for Torpedo Officer Lieutenant Frank Alcorn to confirm crews have finished the next reload. They have a shot lined up they cannot take until the torpedoes are manhandled into the stern tubes.
You've got live torpedo reloading on a surface in the worst of conditions. This is not what you do.
At 0421, word reaches the bridge. 3 more of Parchi's torpedoes are now ready.
Fire!
The American submarine launches a salvo at convoy Mi-11's flagship. All 3 torpedoes hit home. But Parchi's attack continues to draw unwanted attention. Searchlights scan for the American submarine. Escorts that guard the convoy look to eliminate the threat.
Transport, set it
But
up!
Commander Ramage's cool focus does not wane.
I got a target, 1,000 yards.
Just 24 minutes after firing their first torpedo, Parchi now stalks their 5th target of the night. Ramage's focus intensifies, and he does not notice the submarine has stopped.
What's interesting about this point in the engagement, after 20-odd minutes of utter chaos, is that Ramage's scope of vision is really narrowing down, and he's starting to ignore what else is going on around him.
All of a sudden, one of the watch, Ed Rauscher, spots a Japanese escort closing in.
Ship, starboard bow!
His junior officer of the deck is trying to call to the skipper's attention, there's an enemy ship coming in to ram us.
Captain, we're gonna be rammed!
But Ramage ignores Rauscher's calls.
It's on a collision course! Sir! Not gonna lose this ship!
It's clear Ramage is suffering from what we'd call target fixation. He can only see the ship that he is about to torpedo.
Below deck, Parche's crew has heard shouts of an enemy ship bearing down. Battle helmsman Chet Stanton faces a difficult choice. He has received no order from his commander to maneuver away from the threat.
He's heard a lot of this chatter going back and forth, and he realizes there's a ship coming in to ram us. He orders all ahead flank without being told by the skipper to do so.
The crew in the maneuvering room spring into action. Parche's diesel engines roar all ahead flank. On the bridge, Ramage's target fixation finally lifts.
Ramage finally takes a second, glances over and says, Jesus Christ, we're about to be rammed. At that point, he orders all ahead flank.
But even with the helmsman's preemptive order, it may not be enough. Ramage's relentless focus could spell the end for his submarine and his crew. July 31st, 1944.
Sir! Not gonna lose this ship!
With Commander Lawson, Ramage fixated on another target in Japanese convoy Mi-11.
It's on a collision course!
Below deck,
All head flank!
Battle helmsman Chet Stanton has made the decision to evade an escort that threatens to ram the American submarine. The crew of USS Parche wait to see if Stanton acted quickly enough to avoid disaster.
It's an incredibly stressful time for these guys. You're not actively involved in a fight, yet this fight determines whether or not you're going to live or die.
At 0425, the submarine is halfway across the bow of the enemy ship.
Right full rudder!
Commander Ramage belatedly orders a hard turn starboard. Just in time, Parche's stern swings clear. The American submarine narrowly escapes.
Chet Stanton became something of a hero to the crew because had he not had the foresight to go ahead and order emergency all ahead, they would probably have been sliced in half.
We're clear.
Parche's crew has outmaneuvered the Japanese escort. But a bigger challenge looms. Now deep within the convoy, an enemy transport lies straight ahead. But hemmed in by other vessels, Ramage has only one option. He must target the bow, the narrowest part of the ship. Called a down-the-throat shot, it is not recommended if the enemy ship is more than 1,500 yards away. Although the distance between Parche and its target is greater,
Fire!
Ramage decides to risk it. The first torpedo misses, but Ramage fires two more. This time, his torpedoes strike true. Heavily damaged, the ship comes to a rumbling halt. And there is more good news.
Left full rudder!
Ramage sees a gap in the convoy's vessels that crowded him. He wheels around to take aim at the wounded ship from its side. A bigger target and much easier shot to make.
Fire!
A single torpedo finishes the vessel. Ramage's perseverance pays off. It turns out it is a transport ship that carries Japanese troops. More than 2,400 soldiers are lost at sea. Archie's stunning performance against convoy Mi-11 will become known as Ramage's Rampage. In less than an hour, Archie has fired 19 torpedoes and scored at least 14 hits.
As submarine historian Clay Blair once said, this was the most dramatic 48 minutes of the entire submarine war.
As dawn breaks, Ramage gives the order to pull clear of the convoy.
Let's get out of here.
As they depart, they receive a message.
All of a sudden, this Japanese ship starts signaling them with the internationally recognized code for, "What's your name? Who are you?" And Ramage and his deck crew get a real kick out of that, and they're like, well, he's probably got paperwork to fill out too.
On August 16th, 1944, USS Parche returns to port.
Clearly, everyone is ecstatic about the way this patrol has turned out. When they finally do reach Pearl Harbor, everyone is here waiting on the dock for them.
Post-war records credit Parche with 19,200 tons of Japanese shipping sunk on that historic night in the Luzon Strait. Parche's packmate, USS Steelhead, receives credit for sinking 2 of Japan's ships in the same attack. The commander of Parche's Wolfpack, Captain Lou Parks, earns a Navy Cross for his role. However, as lessons are learned, the job of Wolfpack coordinator, filled by officers like Parks, is eventually eliminated. Instead, the lead is given to the most senior submarine commander in the Wolfpack, which simplifies the chain of command and allows independent submariners like Ramage to run their own boats. Carl Kimmons would forge a career in the U.S. Navy of distinction. After desegregation, he would prove the only former mess attendant to serve at each enlisted pay grade and then qualify as an officer. As for Ramage,
There was some criticism of Ramage from other commanders who said that he'd been reckless, dangerous, even foolhardy.
but official commentary on Ramage's patrol report glows. Parche's crew earns a Presidential Unit Citation. And on January 12, 1945, President Franklin Roosevelt presents Commander Lawson Ramage with the Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded by the United States.
I look at this Medal of Honor as revolving around the inspiration that Ramage provides. His total aggressiveness was absolutely the kind of model that they want to promote within the submarine corps. And so here's a guy who embodies the sort of risk-taking that we want to see in our submarine force as a whole, and he pulls it off in the medal on his chest.
After the war, Ramage is promoted to admiral and serves the U.S. Navy for years to come. By the end of his career, he is one of the most decorated American submarine commanders in history.